The land of Israel bled with chaos. In those days there was no king, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Bethlehem, the house of bread, became a place of hunger. A famine gripped the promised land, the very soil that God swore to provide. A man named Elimelech looked at his starving family and made a choice. He would leave the covenant land for the fields of Moab, a land born from incest, a constant enemy of Israel. To go there was to walk into the lion's den by choice. Elimelech, Naomi, and their 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion packed their belongings. They left the land of promise for a land of plenty. The journey was a statement of faithlessness. They abandoned God's provision because the trial seemed too heavy to bear. In Moab, the fields were green and the rivers flowed. The immediate crisis was solved, but the spiritual cost was immeasurable. They settled among the Moabites. The foreign altars and strange gods surrounded them daily, a constant temptation to compromise. Then the first blow fell. Elimelech, the man who led his family out of faith, died in that foreign land. Naomi was left a widow in a hostile land, but she still had her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, her only hope. The sons grew to manhood in Moab, and they did what no Israelite should do. They took Moabite wives. Orpah and Ruth became part of the family. For a time there was joy, the laughter of grandchildren yet to come, but the shadow of judgment lingered. For 10 years the women bore no children. The curse of Moab seemed to cling. Then death struck again. Both Mahlon and Chilion died, leaving Naomi bereft of husband and sons in a single blow. Naomi was left alone, a bitter widow in a foreign land. Her dreams of legacy and family were shattered. She had gone to Moab full, but now she was empty. The name Naomi, meaning pleasant, became Mara, bitter. But in the midst of the tragedy, a rumor reached her ears. The Lord had visited his people, giving them bread in Bethlehem. The famine was over. God had not forgotten his covenant, and Naomi longed to return to the land of her fathers. She gathered her 2 daughters-in-law and set out, 3 widows on a road that led back to the promise. But Naomi knew the cost. She urged Orpah and Ruth to return to their mother's houses, to find new husbands among their own people. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and turned back. The pull of family, home, and the familiar gods was too strong. But Ruth clung to Naomi. A Moabite woman, a daughter of a cursed people, chose the God of Israel. She spoke words that echo through eternity. Where you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Naomi could not dissuade her. So the 2 women, mother and daughter-in-law, continued the journey together. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. The fields were golden, and the town buzzed with life. The whole town was stirred by their return. "Is this Naomi?" the women asked, shocked by her bitter transformation. Naomi answered, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." Naomi's words hang in the air like a curse. She believes God has become her adversary, emptying her life of meaning. But here is what most people miss. Naomi's bitterness is not just sorrow, it is a crisis of faith. She has forgotten God's covenant faithfulness. Elimelech's name means "my God is king," yet he fled the promised land during famine, choosing Moab over trusting Yahweh. Moab was born from Lot's incest with his daughter, a people cursed for 10 generations. No Israelite should have sought refuge there. Naomi stands on the dusty road to Judah, her life shattered by loss, yet she chooses to return to her homeland. She turns to her 2 Moabite daughters-in-law and urges them to go back to their mother's houses. Orpah kisses Naomi and leaves, returning to her people and her gods. But Ruth clings to Naomi with an unbreakable grip, refusing to let go. Ruth speaks words that echo through history. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God." This is not empty poetry. It is a radical conversion, a Moabite woman abandoning her idols to embrace the God of Israel. Culturally, Moabites were forbidden from entering the assembly of the Lord under Deuteronomy 23:3. Yet Ruth's faith shatters that barrier, proving that God's grace transcends human laws. Ruth embodies Hesed covenant loyalty, a steadfast love that mirrors God's own character. Naomi, seeing Ruth's unwavering resolve, stops urging her, and the 2 women travel on. Their journey from Moab to Bethlehem takes about 160 kilometers on foot. They arrive in Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest, a time of provision and hope. The whole town stirs at Naomi's return, but she says, "Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me." Yet Ruth's presence at her side is a silent testimony that hope is not lost. Ruth's vow is more than words. It is a binding covenant that carries legal and spiritual weight. In ancient Near Eastern culture, such a spoken oath was as unbreakable as a written contract. Ruth leaves behind her family, her homeland, and her gods, everything familiar for Naomi and the God of Israel. This is sacrificial love, a picture of what it means to follow God with abandon. The narrative now builds the foundation for the kinsman-redeemer, a theme that will unfold. Ruth's loyalty will be rewarded in ways she cannot yet imagine through a man named Boaz. Naomi's bitterness begins to soften as she witnesses Ruth's unwavering devotion day after day. The two women enter Bethlehem as strangers, but they are not alone. God's providence goes before them. Ruth immediately seeks to glean in the fields, a provision for the poor commanded in the law. She happens to enter the field of Boaz, a wealthy relative of Naomi. This is no coincidence. Boaz notices Ruth and shows her extraordinary kindness, protecting her and providing abundantly. The stage is set for a redemption that will echo down to the lineage of King David and beyond. But this kindness was rooted in an earlier covenant, a vow that defied every cultural norm. Naomi decides to return to Judah, urging her Moabite daughters-in-law to stay behind. Orpah kisses Naomi goodbye and returns to her people. But Ruth clings to Naomi, refusing to let go. Her resolve is unshakable. Ruth speaks, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." This is radical conversion, a Moabite woman embracing the God of Israel. Moabites were excluded from the assembly, yet her faith breaks barriers. Ruth embodies Hesed covenant loyalty. This unbreakable vow sets the stage for a redemption that will echo through history. Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem at the start of barley harvest, their empty hands matched only by their fragile hope. Ruth volunteers to glean behind the harvesters, a provision God gave the poor and foreigner in Leviticus 19. The law of gleaning commands landowners to leave the edges of their fields unharvested for the needy. Here is what most people miss. The Hebrew word for glean implies a deliberate, humble stooping to gather what is left behind. Ruth heads out that morning, not knowing whose field she will enter. But Scripture says she happened to come to Boaz's field. The Hebrew verb mikra carries a sense of divine appointment hidden in what looks like random chance. Boaz arrives from Bethlehem and greets his reapers with a profound blessing. "The Lord be with you." His workers reply, "The Lord bless you." This mutual reverence reveals a community grounded in covenant faith. Boaz notices Ruth among the gleaners and asks his foreman, "Whose young woman is this?" The foreman tells him, "She is the Moabite who returned with Naomi, and she has worked tirelessly since morning." Boaz approaches Ruth directly and says, "Do not go to glean in another field, but stay here with my young women." He offers her protection from harassment, a real danger for a foreign woman alone in the ancient world. Ruth falls on her face, bowing to the ground in gratitude. She asks, "Why have I found favor in your eyes?" Boaz explains he knows all she has done for Naomi, how she left her homeland and came to a people she did not know. He blesses her. "May the Lord repay your work, and may you be fully rewarded by the God of Israel." The Hebrew word for reward, maskaret, implies a completed payment, as if God himself owes her a debt of grace. At mealtime, Boaz invites Ruth to eat with the harvesters, handing her roasted grain and vinegar wine. He instructs his men to purposely pull out stalks of barley from the bundles and leave them for her to glean. This goes beyond the law of gleaning. Boaz acts as a personal benefactor, a foretaste of redemption. Ruth gleans until evening, then beats out the grain, about an ephah of barley, a massive provision for 2 widows. She carries it back to Naomi, who is stunned at the abundance, and asks, "Where did you work today?" Ruth tells her everything, and when she mentions the man's name, Naomi cries out, "Blessed be he of the Lord." Naomi explains that Boaz is a close relative, one of their redeemers, a goel, who can restore their family line. The Hebrew word goel carries the weight of a kinsman who pays debts, avenges blood, and marries a widow to preserve the family name. Naomi tells Ruth to continue gleaning in Boaz's fields, and Ruth does so through the barley and wheat harvests. The fields of Bethlehem become a stage for divine providence, where a Moabite outsider finds shelter under the wings of God. Boaz's kindness is more than charity. It is a shadow of the ultimate Redeemer who would one day come from this very lineage. The Hebrew word for glean is lakat, meaning to pick up leftover grain, a provision for the poor that God embedded in the law itself. Leviticus 19 commands landowners to leave the corners of their fields unharvested, trusting God's economy to sustain the outsider. Boaz greets his reapers with, "The Lord be with you," a rare phrase revealing a man who walks with God even in daily labor. When Boaz learns of Ruth's loyalty to Naomi, he offers her water from his own jars and a seat among the harvesters at mealtime. Naomi, a widow with nothing left, devises a daring plan in the darkness of their humble home. She sends Ruth to the threshing floor where Boaz winnows barley by night. The instruction is precise: uncover his feet and lie down, a sign of submission and plea for redemption. This act, scandalous by any measure, risked both their reputations in the small town of Bethlehem. Yet Ruth obeys without hesitation. She goes to the threshing floor and does exactly as Naomi commanded. The Hebrew verb used here, laying down, carries undertones of vulnerability and trust. She waits in the dark, the scent of grain and dust filling the cool night air. At midnight, Boaz startles awake. He feels a presence in the darkness beside him. The text says he trembled, the same word used for an earthquake or divine encounter. He sees a woman at his feet. "Who are you?" he whispers into the darkness. Ruth replies with a declaration that changes everything. "I am your servant Ruth." She then utters the boldest phrase, "Spread the corner of your garment over me." In Hebrew, kanaf means wing or corner of a robe, a symbol of protection and marriage. She invokes the kinsman-redeemer, "For you are a goel." This is a legal claim for redemption. The goel was a protector of family, obligated to buy back land and even avenge blood. But here, Ruth asks for a different kind of redemption, marriage, to continue the family line. Boaz does not rebuke her. Instead, he blesses her, calling her a woman of noble character. He praises her loyalty, saying she could have chased younger men but chose him instead. Boaz promises to resolve the matter in the morning. There is a closer relative who must first refuse. He tells Ruth to stay the night. Her reputation would be protected by his honor. Before dawn, she leaves, her identity hidden in the darkness. Boaz gives her 6 measures of barley. The number 6 in Hebrew often symbolizes incompleteness, a sign that the redemption is not yet finished. Ruth returns to Naomi, who asks expectantly, "How did it go, my daughter?" Naomi immediately understands. Boaz will not rest until the matter is settled. The plan is working, but a shadow looms. There is another potential redeemer. Will Boaz succeed? The tension mounts. This midnight encounter foreshadows a greater redemption, a goal who would one day cover all humanity. Ruth moves silently through the darkness, her sandals padding on the threshing floor dust. The weight of Naomi's plan rests on her shoulders. She finds Boaz at the edge of the grain heap, his breathing deep and steady. With trembling hands, she uncovers his feet and lies down. Midnight strikes. Boaz stirs, startled to find a woman at his feet. "Who are you?" he whispers. Her answer will change everything. "I am your servant Ruth," she says. "Spread your garment over me, for you are a redeemer." In Hebrew, goel, the one who restores. This is no mere request, it's a legal claim. The goel must redeem land, blood, and name. Ruth dares to invoke the ancient covenant. You stand at the city gate of Bethlehem, where every legal matter finds its resolution under the morning sun. Boaz gathers 10 elders of the town, forming a quorum to judge the matter of redemption. He calls the nearer kinsman the one with first rights, and presents the case plainly. The land of Naomi, sold in dire times, can be bought back. The kinsman eagerly agrees. But Boaz adds the crucial condition: you must also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the widow. To marry her means to raise up the name of the dead, to carry a heavy cost. The kinsman hesitates. He calculates the risk to his own inheritance and family line. He cannot redeem, he says. His own estate would be divided. Let Boaz do it. In ancient Israel, the refusal to redeem was sealed by removing a sandal and giving it to the other party. This act, symbolizing relinquishment, makes the transfer official and public. Boaz declares before the elders and all the people, "I am buying the land from Naomi." He also announces that he will take Ruth as his wife to preserve the name of the deceased. The crowd witnesses the transaction. The legal process is complete, binding and unbreakable. The elders, once silent, now speak a blessing over the union, invoking Rachel and Leah. "May the Lord make the woman who enters your house like Rachel and Leah, who built the house of Israel." They also pray that Boaz may prosper and be famous in Bethlehem, a city of bread. The gate, once a place of judgment, becomes a place of redemption and hope. What seemed like a random encounter is now revealed as divine orchestration. The kinsman's refusal was not a loss, but a necessary step in God's greater plan. Boaz, as kinsman-redeemer, points to a greater redeemer yet to come. The legal transfer ensures that Ruth and Naomi's lineage continues, a line that leads to King David. Every detail, the sandal, the elders, the public declaration, fulfills the law perfectly. God works through human legal systems to accomplish his redemptive purposes. The gate of Bethlehem becomes a hinge point in salvation history. What the rival redeemer would not do, Boaz does willingly, at great personal cost. He redeems the land, the widow, and the future, securing the lineage of the Messiah. The elder's blessing echoes through time, foreshadowing the birth of Jesus Christ. The gate swings open, and redemption enters history, step by step, sandal by sandal. The sandal slides off, a silent testimony to a contract voided, a legacy released into better hands. Boaz stands before the elders, declares redemption, land and widow, binding covenant with every witness. The elders lift voices, pronouncing a blessing over Ruth and Boaz, invoking Rachel and Leah, mothers of tribes. Each word of the blessing weaves into Israel's fabric, ensuring the line continues toward David and beyond. The gate transaction seals more than property. It seals a lineage that will birth the Messiah. Ruth bears a son, Obed, and Naomi's emptiness is filled with new life and joy. The women of Bethlehem rejoice, saying, "Your daughter-in-law who loves you has given him birth." Obed grows up and becomes the father of Jesse, a man after God's own heart. Jesse then fathers David, the shepherd king whose line would never end. The Book of Ruth ends with a genealogy that points unmistakably to Jesus Christ. Matthew's Gospel lists Ruth by name. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse. Ruth, a Moabite outsider, becomes a vital link in the messianic lineage. This demonstrates God's grace to all nations, Jew and Gentile united in one family. The Hebrew word goel, kinsman-redeemer, finds its ultimate fulfillment in Christ. Boaz redeemed Ruth and Naomi's land and lineage, a shadow of the greater redemption. Jesus, our kinsman-redeemer, purchases not just property but humanity itself. Naomi's bitterness turns to joy as she holds her grandson, the seed of promise. The women say, "A son has been born to Naomi," restoring her name and hope. God's providence weaves tragedy into triumph, sorrow into redemption's story. The lineage: Perez, Hezron, Ram, Amminadab, Nahshon, Salmon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David. From David's line comes the Messiah, the Lion of Judah who redeems all. Ruth's story echoes the call of Abraham, all nations blessed through one family. The threshing floor encounter between Ruth and Boaz prefigures Christ and his church. Boaz covers Ruth with his garment, a symbol of protection and betrothal. The sandal ceremony at the gate seals the redemption, a legal and loving act. Ruth's loyalty, hesed, mirrors God's covenant faithfulness to his people. The Book of Ruth shows that no one is beyond the reach of God's redemptive plan. Christ's redemption reverses the curse of barrenness and exile forever. The empty tomb is the ultimate sign that our kinsman-redeemer lives. From Moabite to mother of royalty, God's grace writes the most unlikely stories. Ruth 4:17. Obed is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now we see the full picture. A Moabite woman, once an outsider, becomes the great-grandmother of King David. But the story doesn't end with David. The genealogy in Ruth 4 points forward to another king, the ultimate redeemer. Matthew chapter 1 verse 5 confirms, Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Ruth, a Gentile, is in Christ's lineage. Here is what most people miss. The kinsman-redeemer is a prophetic shadow of Jesus, who redeems not just land but all humanity. God's providence turns Naomi's emptiness into fullness, and Ruth's exile into royalty.